Barbara. There we go. Abby and Barbara, thank you both for pulling this together, and Janine for supporting. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I wish everybody health and safety. Despite the lovely weather we're having, it's important to continue making sure that we are practicing all the social distancing guidelines that we need to, no matter what phase we're in. Some promising information from the city today was that the positive testing rate had dropped to 0.25% for all cases, for all tests that were administered yesterday. And so that's really promising data. It doesn't speak to neighborhood or zip code specific rates of infection for COVID, which, as we know, are much higher in certain neighborhoods, actually beyond the 3% acceptability margin of the city, and disproportionately affect neighborhoods of communities of color. So we're not here to mince our words. While citywide numbers are very nice, it doesn't change the narrative around larger issues that we face as a city. So the reason we're here today is to take a look at our fall reopening plan. And for those of you who were not with us during the last meeting that we had, all I can say is there's been a lot of changing of information. And I'm going to go through our plan right now. So here we go. A little bit of background. I'm not going to rehash all of the last few meetings that we've had. There's a lot of it. You can go into the PTA page and see if you'd like to know how the situation has evolved over the course of the last month and a half. We are opening the school at just above 1,500 students. That does place us near capacity. Our building is relatively new and has classrooms of variable size. The hallways are semi-narrow, meaning that there is space enough for students to ambulate on the corners or along the walls while still maintaining social distancing. We have 3 main stairwells, which are going to be specific for up and down movement when the building is open, and we have a bank of 3 elevators, which typically are used for everyone to go from the ground floor up to 5, and then taking the steps from that point. But in this case, we'll only allow 2 people per trip. If you follow the school's NYC Instagram or the mayor's Instagram, you may have seen his back to school pledge. And this is new as of today. But it implies that certain things are going to be provided to the school, including personal protective equipment and cleaning supplies, that we'll have a cache of these items, a 30-day supply, and we can always get more, even on short notice. We already have a full-time nurse in the building. We have issues with some of our building spaces in terms of the ventilation, and I am escalating those issues to the city, but don't have a clear response just yet. And specifically, our questions are around what would have been our isolation room and our save room, which is a place. The save room is where students go if there are disciplinary issues. The isolation room would be a place where students would go if they are demonstrating any symptoms consistent with COVID-19. So again, if we don't have answers for those spaces, then we're going to have to get very creative. Same thing for our guidance counselor suites. They are not properly ventilated, and same thing for our stairwells. They're not properly ventilated. So this is something just to be aware of, meaning that, is there ventilation? No, not in the classic sense. Does air still move through those spaces? Yes. But it's not the same system that pulls air from outside and cycles it through the entire building. So we cannot pull air directly out of the staircases. Students and staff will still be social distancing. Students and staff will still be wearing face coverings. That's a non-negotiable. If a student refuses to wear a face covering, the family will be notified and will be asked to ensure that that student can follow that practice with the family's understanding and the student consent. If there cannot be agreement, we'll ask that the student engage in remote learning. We're not going to put members of our community at risk. It says students will remain in pods for as much of the day as possible, but I'm going to explain how that is also going to be challenged. There will be hand sanitizer in every classroom. We have free COVID testing and expedited results for faculty. That information has already been shared with the faculty. We're encouraging all employees to be tested monthly. I don't know why it's not mandatory. I don't, for the life of me, but the DOE is strongly encouraging everyone to get tested. And there is a tracing core that will look into any confirmed cases where the virus is spread. And we'll also be communicating with all students and families if there are confirmed cases in the school. That's, of course, immediate and non-negotiable. Another thing that's happening is when necessary, classrooms and school buildings will temporarily close. If you want to take a look at the parameters that govern that, they're on the Schools NYC site, but the quick breakdown is this. If one student tests positive, then that classroom, or any of the classrooms they were in, and all the people they were in are quarantined for 14 days. If two students test positive in separate classrooms, the entire school goes into quarantine and fully remote learning for a minimum 14 days. So just giving you a heads up, that's a protocol that's built into the system. That's not something that I have any control over, and that will affect how everybody in the school learns. Our school will be cleaned and disinfected on a daily basis. All high incidence areas will be, high touch zones, will be cleaned multiple times. The school buildings will be disinfected overnight using electrostatic sprayers. And students will be learning 5 days per week, whether in person or online. So I want to actually now transition to that, because that's really the crux of why we're here. I put up this photo last week of our gymnasium in an attempt to demonstrate that our school has to think about how to get groups of students together if we were going to follow our exception model. Well, let me spare us the time. The exception model did not get approved. So all that planning around bringing in specific grade levels of students is not part of the conversation anymore. Instead, we are going to be opting for, and I'll go back in just a moment, for Chancellor's Model 3A. This is the 6-day cycle that we've been talking about since about a month ago. And the 6-day cycle ensures that there is a fully remote group of students, Cohort D, and that 3 other cohorts of students come in on alternating days, cohorts A, B, and C. What you see is that on this chart, over the course of 3 weeks, every cohort comes in 5 times in person, meaning that over the course of a marking period, students are in the building 10 times. Now, one of the quick fringe benefits of this model is that unlike the previous exception model that we had proposed, there is an alternating group in on the building on Mondays, and we know that Mondays are days in which there are commonly holidays on the DOE calendar. If you're asking me where's that DOE calendar, I don't have it for you yet because it has not yet been released. But that's something that's historically been the case. So we're just trying to build in equity into the working schedule. Now, let's bring it back real quick to this, which is our updated schedule. And I apologize for the small text. I am going to be sharing this information with our PTA as well as families once we're done with this today, so you can scrutinize a bit more closely. Our teacher schedule is built as follows. The planning period for teachers is going to be from 8 to 8:30, where they'll be working on implementing and setting up lessons for the day, as well as in department meetings. There's then going to be a 20-minute office period running from 8:30 to 8:50. We had the option to place that, it was managed as per the DOE. So we had to find a way to put that into teacher schedules. And we realized that putting it in the morning gave more time for our students to get to the school building. That was important for us because why start the day earlier, knowing full well that transportation, social distancing, and mass transportation for approximately 80% of our students was not going to be easily done. So we built in these office periods into the earlier portion of the day. Now, we also have 7 periods throughout the day. For those of you that have been with art and design before, you know that we typically have 8 periods in a student's program, with one of those periods being lunch. The challenge is now that we have been advised by the city that lunch should be eaten in a classroom, simultaneous to instruction. So a working lunch of sorts for students. And our goal is to ensure that every student, again, has the lunch that they need. During instruction, it's done in a way where lunch consumption is still socially distanced and students can accomplish what they need to. One of the challenges we see here is, or that we receive from families and students, was that class periods were not long enough. So we did, again, extend class periods so that they are approximately 44 minutes long, depending on which period you're in. But the key thing is also that there has to be transition time between classes that allow for students to ambulate from room to room. You know, this is just part of the issue with not being able to program in a pod and having to follow our model. This chance was recommended model. So students are still going to be following their program going from class to class. In terms of the transition time between classes, we see that it's 5 minutes, and that's an increase of time compared to what it was prior. Obviously, it's going to take students more time, but it raises the question, how many students are going to be in the building at a given moment? So I want to quickly round out this part, the prep period at the bottom, and then I'll explain how many students we're actually going to be seeing. The day is over for all students at 2:16. Dismissal, socially distanced dismissal. Students will be exiting out the left-hand side of the building and proceeding to whatever route they need to take, with the exception of those who are taking busing. Teachers are going to be in the building for another half hour, or not, for their prep period. According to the union and the DOE, it's actually at their discretion. And so that's the day, because at 2:50, everyone's out and we're deep cleaning. And that's going to be the case on a daily basis. So let's bring it back to, again, this model. How did we get here? Because approximately 1/3 of our families, our students, are going to be fully remote. And if that number of young professionals are fully remote, then it leaves us with an opportunity to do smaller group instruction. And this is what it's going to look like. Our school has approximately 1,500 students. So if we take that third out of the mix, it leaves us with 1,000 students that are going to be in person for instruction. That number is subject to change, because remember, families can always opt for fully remote instruction at any time, right? But with 1,000 students divided into 3 groups, that's about 333 per group. And when you break that down into a classroom, it's actually a very manageable small group to fit into any of our classes. So let's say that the maximum class size is 34 students on record. 1/3 of those students are out, which leaves us with about 23 students. Divided into those 3 days, you're looking at no more than 8 students per cohort group. And so what we've done is we've taken this model and we've applied it to our in-person instruction and still managed to keep small group learning happening. I'm going to go into some of the limitations of this problem in just a moment. And as I see that little blinking chat bar pop up, I know that questions are emerging as well. One of the things that we want is a manageable amount of work. A big point of feedback that we got from students and families was, what are we going to do to make sure that students are not overwhelmed? They already have to deal with the fact that they're in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of massive social and political upheaval, in a very uncertain time. Why are we giving them 8 hours of homework per night? And so core classes are going to operate, well, all classes are going to operate on this cycle, where they're not providing more than 10 assignments for one of these 3-week sets. The reason why that's going to be the case is because it'll allow, and this is really key, it's going to allow us the opportunity to give a measured amount of work for every student for every core subject. Again, I can't articulate enough how upset many of our students were in that feeling of being overwhelmed, the anxiety, the shutting down that takes place when there's just too much on your plate and the next day seems so uncertain. To that end, we had to do something where we effectively estimated the amount of time that tasks would take an individual at any given level and broke it down so that we weren't overwhelming them over the course of one of our 3-week cycles. Now, Cohort D, students in Cohort D are fully remote. What we're doing is planning on pairing them up with Cohort A, D and A. It's easy. And the D and A cohorts will be paired together so that if there's something happening with in-person instruction in a classroom, Cohort D can refer to Cohort A students or buddy up as a support. We still don't have any guidelines from the Department of Education about if we're allowed to video stream or live stream what's happening in a classroom to students' homes, or if we're even allowed to record what's happening. However, many of the teachers who are going to be in remote, we're going to be remote during this time period, as they've applied for their own accommodations or out of school rationale, have co-teachers who will be in the building. And so we'll still be able to provide instruction in a blended context, whether it's one teacher working remotely and the other teacher, even in an ICT classroom, in person in the same class. Let's keep this moving, because now we're going to get to some of the challenges that we're dealing with. Among them is that we know curriculum for in-person will not be different than what's happening remotely. The purpose of student building for in-person instruction is for real human connection, is for clarifying questions, and to make sure that their teacher has a visual on their progress. What's it going to look like if you're in the back of the classroom raising your hand and the teacher can't come within 6 feet? Well, that's why the assignments are remote, so that those same assignments assigned digitally are accessible to the teacher, whether they're in the front of the classroom, or whether that's and the students in the back of the classroom, or whether that's students at home. Either way, they'll all be available in the same way. A challenge is going to be the flow of traffic. It's going to take more time. And we know that there are some areas of the school that do not support the flow of fresh air, including the save room and the isolation room. So we know those two spaces can't work for their current purposes. We have to repurpose some other rooms. We also want to acknowledge that there are a group of unions that are advocating to push the start date of the school year to the end of September or the beginning of October. As of yesterday, the UFT has called for a potential strike or legal action if schools cannot be guaranteed as safe. And a number of other principals are also writing letters to the city saying that we don't have enough answers yet for all the questions that we have. I am awaiting more information from the city leadership in regards to how specific elements of teaching are going to roll out. I also am not 100% confident about starting this year without all the information. You know, another challenge is going to be that teachers are going to be teaching their 5 periods in person in the classroom. And so when are they going to be working with the students who are fully remote? Now, we have prep time and office hours built into the teacher's day, but we acknowledge that that's going to be an area where we're going to have to evolve a little bit and make sure that students who are working remotely, again, that group D, still has an opportunity to interface with group A and also get FaceTime with their teacher. Our focus for this year in terms of professional learning and professional development is going to be around remote learning tools. Sorry, I should have fixed that typo since my last meeting, but it's not remote earning, although that sounds really nice too. And we are going to try to find ways to actually increase enrollment in our internship program and also focus on more economic opportunities for our students for paid internships. And then also culturally responsive, sustaining education for remote instruction specifically, which means that we're not going to start this year off hitting the ground running. I know there's a lot of folks that feel that there's a great import to making sure that students dive immediately into the mastery of content and continue to work in their professional artistry. But that would also be ignoring the world writ large. And there is so much reconnecting and relationships that we have to work to secure again, that is really going to be the priority of our institution in the first few weeks. And as that moves on, we will then work to get back into rigorous opportunities for students. So what does that mean for messaging and organization? I'm working on a parent handbook right now. It is not a small document by any stretch, and it is a living document as well. It's going to contain all the contact info, key dates, persons, and school culture information for art and design, along with our internal calendar, because the DOE doesn't have one yet. Organization for families, both for teaching, administration, as well as supports for families and students. I'm updating a staff handbook right now as well. Student handbook is coming out soon, and we have a new website, which is going to launch in the next couple of weeks with a much cleaner look and a much more attuned remote support section. So here are the things that are still a work in progress, and then we'll turn it over to questions and answers. Staff are still submitting accommodations on a rolling basis. Presently, 80% of staff are returning to in-person instruction. It's an important number to consider if you are still on the fence about in-person versus remote. 80% of our staff are returning to in-person instruction. We petitioned the city to shut down 56, still waiting to hear back. We don't know yet, again, if teachers are allowed to live stream out from their classes, or if teachers at home are allowed to live stream into their classes in the school, or if there's going to be a mandate to that regard, because we may not be able to mandate that happen. Total number of families who are opting into fully remote may change as well. Remember, families can opt into fully remote learning at any time, but there is going to be a quarterly opportunity with dates to be determined where families can opt into blended learning back in the building. We're still working on completing programs for all students with that 7-period schedule. So again, we're used to an 8-period schedule. That's how we designed our program. And then academic policy came out and said, you know what, do 7 periods instead. And when you take a school as complex as ours with the almost 100,000 different programming options that a student can have because of the different major and arts classes at our school, which is spread out over 8 periods, and then you take one of those periods away, I cannot tell you the programming nightmare that it produces, but we're working on it and we're going to have it done within the next week. We also have to notify families of what day their young professional is assigned, whether it's A, B, or C, by approximately the 26th of August. I'm going to ask for a little bit of flexibility from our community. We are working as quickly as we can, but we're trying to hit that deadline. And yeah, and then lastly, it's about programming and movement of staff. You know, that's what rooms they're going to be assigned in. That's really it. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and then I guess we're ready for questions. Barbara, Evie, or Janine, I know there's a lot of questions that I've missed as we've gone through. So
there's a lot, and I think, you know, some that are kind of more like, you know, can my student get something out of their locker? Maybe like those, I think, could be follow-up, maybe, you know, but I think maybe we should kind of focus on the school reopening right now, just given the time limitations. And I did have to step away, so I'm not sure if some of these were covered, but one question is, why was it turned down? I imagine, I don't know of one school that submitted an alternative plan that had it approved, you know, just talking to friends or my other child's school as well. So
I can really quickly, really quickly address that, and it's this.
Sure.
The alternate plan that we came up with was the most equitable model we could have envisioned, because it ensured that no matter what class your child was in, that there is going to be a subject area licensed professional who is there to supervise them as they conducted their learning remotely, but also in person over the course of the day. The reason why that was a challenge is because we were focusing so much on equity that we missed one element of the school culture, which is instruction. If you're a teacher, your role in the school is to work with your assigned students to better their understanding of a particular task or skills. And in this case, it made the most sense for our students, according to the central office, for our students to be paired with the teachers on their program in the classrooms that they're assigned to as part of their schedule, so that they could receive instruction directly from their teacher of record in small groups. So that was one of the elements. The other element that made it really difficult was that we had tried to address the issue of arts programming, but there was a huge challenge with having 3 consecutive periods of art programming for students and not being with their teacher, their potential arts teacher of record in the building. It kind of defeats the purpose of being in a major specific arts class, which is the reason that your young professional is in this building, among others, you know, and not receiving instruction from their major teacher, which how else would they be improving and moving specifically in that professional trajectory?
So there's a question here about, will they be divided by grades in their cohorts, and can they choose their cohort?
So the answer is no, you cannot choose your cohort. We're still working on the division model that makes the most sense. And it's very complicated, unfortunately, because you can't go in alpha order as classes are all different. And you can't necessarily go by student ID number, and you can't fully randomize because that's based on, because you have to make sure that no matter what, you have no more than 11 students in a classroom. Otherwise, you're not following social distancing. And there's certain classrooms where students have paraprofessionals and other support staff. So we also have to now factor in students' specific disabilities or IEP requirements. It becomes a little more nuanced. We're working on that model right now. Sorry to interrupt you. We're working on that model right now. We don't have it locked in just yet. I'm just being honest with you, but it's something we're looking at all the different ways that we could subdivide those in-person students into those groups A, B, and C.
Okay. Will remote learning students be given a remote learning device such as a laptop?
If they require a remote learning device, there's two ways to go. Right now, our school is strapped for laptops, especially if we have to have in-building laptops as well to support instruction for students who are in class. There is a link you can follow to get hardware support from the central office. They provide centrally domain and Wi-Fi enabled iPads, which do connect to the Google suite of services that students use at art and design. I'm personally I prefer a laptop over an iPad. That's me personally. And unfortunately, the Chromebooks we've been giving out are also not compatible with the Adobe suite of programs. We're in a bit of a lurch there. We are trying to find creative ways to, one, raise funds, but two, order up more Chromebooks and other laptops for students so that we can make sure we have enough in the building and then enough so we can also lend out. But we are going to make the recommendation that if a student has a personal laptop, that they bring that laptop to school with them, and then we'll ensure that students can get on the Wi-Fi and use them as well while keeping additional backup hardware in the classroom.
Will the school be doing temperature checks daily?
So it's not mandatory, but we're working on purchasing a system ASAP that does that. As soon as a student swipes in, it also does a quick, like a 1-second temperature check. And if a student has a temperature, this is welcome to the future, folks. And as soon as that happens, if the temperature hits a certain margin, right, they're automatically isolated. The family is contacted. The student is asked to be taken for testing, and then they have to meet the criteria for return to school, which is be one, COVID-free, and then symptom-free for at least 24 hours.
Okay. Will the DA cohort teachers be teaching massively more students at a time than the B or C teachers?
These are the same teachers. They're just teaching on a different cohort on each day of the week, respectively. So the short answer is no. They're going to be working with the exception of that's a good question. For the D and A students, that's going to work for the first marking period. But then for the next marking period, if we pair up the B group with the D group, then it becomes more equitable because we have 3 marking periods per term. So we could really pair up these remote learning students with every other cohort in the class and ensure that there's an equal and even mix. It's a lot of moving parts, but it gets students to work together and know each other from different groups in the same classroom, which is something that would be happening organically anyway. And for the teachers, it just means that they're going to have to ensure that there's quality instruction in place remotely for days when students are not attending.
If a student has extra time for tests, will they also get extended time for assignments? It didn't seem to happen for my child in the spring.
So one thing that we did do in the spring was we recognized that we built in extensions for every single class, especially in terms of when homework was assigned and classwork. So if it wasn't, it's one thing if it wasn't administered. And so that's something that you can always reach out to me or Ms. Johnson or your child's guidance counselor about so that we can work to remedy that situation. But one of the rules that we set up was that if any homework was assigned, it was due midnight on Sunday, the week it was assigned. We wanted to give students the weekend to take care of it at the very least. So in terms of time extensions, we built in more time than what would have been historically needed, even as extended time. And for our grading policy, that's something that we have to sit down as a school leadership team and really take a closer look at, because remote is very different than in person. And if there's a third of the students that are working remotely, then every task is homework. So you can't really have a homework section anymore if all the work is done at home. And that's something that we'll take a look at as a school to make sure that grading and assessment are done in an equitable way. Because until we get back to being full-time in the school building, homework as an idea may not really make sense.
Is there a contingency plan if the city decides to delay the start of the school year?
I don't want to say, your guess is not as good as mine.
Yeah, okay. Are there concerns that teachers will call out sick due to their own personal concerns of getting COVID?
We're at a point right now where, as I mentioned, 80% of our staff is returning for in-person instruction. So using that statistic, that it says a lot. Will people call out sick? We always have folks that call out sick for any number of reasons. But if people are calling out sick for COVID-19 related reasons, there's no clear guidance yet from any of the unions about how that's going to be applied to their time off, their sick days, et cetera. And most importantly, it would require that we bring more substitutes into the building. And substitutes come from a bank of licensed teachers that we bring in, but they may be different from day to day. So more food for thought when you're considering the external factors that are going to be introduced into our school environment.
How will ICT class requirements be managed for blended and remote students? In other words, a teacher and the two teachers in the classroom.
No matter what, two teachers are going to be available immediately, whether it's one in the classroom and one fully remote, whether it's both work. I mean, I don't think we're in a situation where any two teachers are out of a given class, but either way, you're either going to have two teachers in person in a classroom supporting socially distanced, or you're going to have one in person, one remote. But either way, the time requirement will be met.
So no remote students get synchronous classes, only office hours? Is it primarily an independent study?
So it's not an independent study, again, because we're going to be linking up the in-learning experiences of those remote students with one in-person cohort. But the question still remains, are we going to be allowed to have recorded lessons, live video streaming in the classroom? And until I have an answer there, I can't say definitively what that's going to look like.
Okay, so more will come on remote learning because I think there's some other questions on that. So hang tight, folks. Okay, is there a buddy system with upperclassmen and freshmen that gives new students a buddy they can turn to get to know the school better within the confines of remote learning?
We've gone through a few different model options as far as what peer support looks like in the school building. Our summer bridge program, which is coming up on September 2nd and 3rd, they're two separate days, not the same activities, so students should go to both if they can. September 2nd is really actually all about getting to know the school building, getting to know expectations, and getting to know each other. I strongly encourage that the parents of any of our first year or new young professionals in the school have their child attend. We were planning on having our NHS students pair up with groups of our first and second year students who needed additional support and for socialization. One of the benefits of having a population as large as us is that our NHS program needs to meet their hour requirements in terms of community service. And it's a really easy way for our seniors who are in NHS, or juniors or seniors respectively, to get FaceTime and work on socialization skills and school culture with these new students. So that's not set in stone yet, but that's something that we've been floating, and we think we'll have a working model by the middle of September.
The dates to switch from remote to blended learning.
Don't have them yet. We know it's going to be done on a quarterly basis.
Okay. When will they receive class schedules?
We're aiming by August 31st, so the end of this month. That's the game plan.
Okay.
I mean, ideally sooner, but that's, yeah.
Okay.
I should mention, sorry, one thing I want to say, Evie, is that normally we begin programming in April. So.
Woo-hoo! All right. Soap in the bathroom. How can we be sure that there's soap in the bathroom and that students can wash their hands several times a day?
Well, we can be sure there's soap in the bathroom because we have more than ample supply of all those items and sanitizing items. The second one seems to be a matter of like, how can students get to the bathroom, right, or have access to the bathroom? But that we're working on opening up more bathrooms actually per floor to ensure that there's less movement around the building. Normally, students would have to go several floors down or several floors up to the closest bathroom, and we want to avoid that by having more bathrooms manned by school aides.
Will remote students get FaceTime with their teachers?
Yes. So whether it's during their, whether it's during those learning opportunities when they're aligned to an in-person cohort or during office hours, those are both going to be a possibility.
Which chemicals will be used for the daily deep cleaning?
I'll get back to you on that. There is a list of approved chemicals, and I know that our school custodial engineer has an exhaustive list that I can provide.
What are the size of the groups for the remote learning groups?
Same.
Same.
Again, because of the number of students that we have, it broke down quite nicely into quarters for the whole school.
Someone's asking about teacher layoffs because there was, so we don't know.
We don't know yet. I mean, we are fortunate in that despite losing 10% of our operational budget this year, we were able to fully staff our building. And I prioritized fully staffing over cutting teachers and then having obviously larger classes that wouldn't work. I knew that our staff would be receptive to the idea of keeping their positions as opposed to having to search elsewhere or worrying about after-school opportunities and payment for those types of things for the first few weeks. In time, if we maintain our register at the current number that it is, we will have a sizable amount of money by the mid-year point with which we can really open up a lot of extracurricular options and other opportunities for our students. So my hope is that we can just make this work and hang tight for the first few months.
Will there be regents this year?
Likelihood is no for January, just because of the way things are starting off. If you have students who are fully remote, just as they were back in spring, then you can't make a case why anything should change. And because the regents are an annualized exam and they rely on what happens in the first half of the year, it would be strange if they also held the June regents. But we have yet to receive that guidance from the State Department.
I think there's just a few questions about, the art instruction. So, did we try and consider, once a week students coming in for their art, and then also a parent wondering like that they're going to fall behind, because, people were happy to get into kids were happy to get in certain programs, and now that they're not going to be able to do that in person.
Yeah, most definitely. And that is, one of the most heartbreaking components of all this is how do we maintain a high clip or an effective, rigorous level of instruction if students are not in person as frequently? So back in spring, I told all of my teachers we have to optimize for remote learning in the off chance that this continues. Either way, there's going to be some percentage of our population that will not be able to return to the building. And I was right. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. So what I will say is that families have to make a decision that best serves the interests of their child. Now, I can't tell you to opt for remote learning if your child's teachers aren't in the building itself, right? If your child's teachers are remote, that's a decision that you would have to make. I'm also telling you that 80% of teachers are returning to the building. And in given the transparency request, that's about as much information as I can provide at this time. So is the instruction going to suffer? My angle is no, it's not, because teachers have already modified the systems that they're going to be using to teach. At first it was, well, how do we run instruction in our architecture department if we don't have CAD? Okay, so the teacher just has to download Google SketchUp and use a modified version of a digital service that emulates a lot of the same characteristics. Is it as comprehensive? No, but can they still teach the same design principles? Yes. And we've had every one of our arts teachers look at their work through that lens. Our freshman art kits were received today, I believe, and tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And so that means that we're going to be distributing those materials to freshman families, whether they're remote or whether students pick them up in person. We're going to make sure that the students are still maintaining their creativity with the appropriate tools.
Someone is asking about other materials like books. What if, books for classes or even returning books that they had from last year as well?
Yeah, returning books is going to be something that we do focus more on at first, just to make sure that we can re-up our inventory. But I told all of our teachers that digital text is the way to go. Having it available digitally for students seems like a non-negotiable and really the only fair thing. Yes, we all like having a book that we can read, that's in front of us, that we can hopefully not mark up, but having a digital text allows for greater equity. It allows for instant and immediate use. And if you have your laptop, then you have your text. So that's what we've encouraged all teachers to use instead.
Will the school have a link for software to be used in digital art?
Right, so right now we're focusing on online programs, and if it's a matter of we're still waiting to hear back from Adobe. They were able to hook us up with discounted rates for student use at home. That may still be the case going into this fall, but I need to get a little bit of, I need to hear from my tech teachers in charge of that partnership.
Are the DNA students getting access to the exact same content? Does this match the other groups? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
We talked about the books. How are you determining who's placed in what cohort? I don't know if that was answered.
Work in progress.
Work in progress. Okay, great. If your child has an IEP, will they get extra help?
Yeah, they'll get everything that IEP mandates. And for students with IEPs, a remote learning plan is also part of the mandate from the city. So if you're an incoming or a new student to the school, you should be receiving contact from a case manager who not only normally runs the student's IEP meeting and convenes for the CSE, but also will be making sure there's a clear remote learning plan in place that lines up with the IEP itself.
And there's another question about when can they opt back in to blended learning? There's going to be different points throughout the year where that's...
Right. Again, quarterly, we don't know exactly which dates.
What's the protocol if a teacher gets sick?
If they begin exhibiting symptoms consistent with COVID, they have to immediately leave the building. They also must immediately get tested. And then only if they're COVID-free, again, and symptom-free for 24 hours are they allowed to return, which means that their classes then would be, well, they'd be teaching remotely. It creates a problem, right? When the teacher's out of the building, the students are still expected to be there. I think we can all kind of see that logistics issue and the quality issue that emerges. Again, it's one of those things which I think is forcing a lot of principals and folks around the city to say, there's no clean solution to this, especially if infection rates go up. I can't tell you to keep your child at home. I'm not going to do that because our teachers are fantastic at art design and the in-person quality of instruction is unparalleled. Unfortunately, if a teacher is not in the building, that does affect things.
In terms of the art kits picking up in person, that would be for the students who are doing the blended learning. Otherwise, they'll be mailed, right, for the remote only students.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. Some of these fractions I'm not so good with. Will remote students have only teachers that are not returning to the building? 20% of teachers for 33% of students.
No, we're not doing, the numbers don't match up. The grade levels don't match up, the classes don't match up. It would be lovely if it was a clean 1-to-1 ratio, but it's not the case.
There will be a replay. We'll be posting this session so everyone can watch it again. I can't remember, Barbara, if we also include the chat or is it we just post the video?
No, we just post the video.
The video, okay. Let's see. Summer Bridge is remote, yes. What will happen in in-person classes? Will students work on assignments that have already been assigned, or will they learn new things? Will the same teachers teach in person as remote?
So again, students are going to be going into classrooms, working with teachers who assign the content, but it's the same content that's been assigned for remote students. The purpose of going into the classroom is not to learn new content, right? It's to reinforce whatever needs to be taken care of for the remote learning schedule.
Do parents whose kids are remote still need to submit medical papers? Yes, Janine says yes. I mean, I would, yeah. Eventually they are going to come back to school, so.
Right, exactly.
Who can I contact if my child is signed up for blended? Janine.
If your child signed up for blended, Janine Johnson, our parent coordinator, is the go-to. But if they signed up for blended, then we're good to go. We already know.
Is this system going to last until the new year or until June? We just don't know. We don't know, and it's really, really hard. But it's who would have thought back in March when school shut down that we'd be where we are right now? So I think that question is, you know, Max, maybe you have the answer. I don't know, but
I am gonna, if I can just interject
yeah.
very quickly. Folks, if you did not listen to the Chancellor's town hall that was done earlier this week, I would suggest you do that, because a lot of your questions and concerns he has thoroughly responded to. I know it's recorded, and I also know that it's available on the Department of Education website. Please don't ask me what the website is at the moment, other than www.schools.nyc.gov. If you just type in Chancellor's Town Hall, it should come right up. A lot of your questions he has really been answering. And the town hall that was done last week or 2 weeks ago was almost 2 hours long. So just wanted to put that out there.
There's a question about student council, clubs, sports.
So sports and PSAL is a no-go for fall. There's been word from the PSAL that all fall sports activities are canceled. However, extracurriculars in the school, specifically our clubs, are still on. Tutoring is going to be on and fully remote, because otherwise it would be inequitable to the students who are outside of the building. And all of our school activities right now are planned for remote for the time being. And to answer that question from before, that is a $1 billion question. And I am very optimistic, but we have to work with a plan that we think will work for the time being, and be mindful that the plan is subject to change.
There's a question about college application help and the college application process. So just wondering if there's going to be extra help for those soon-to-be seniors.
Yeah, most definitely. We actually have a couple pieces in place to support that. So there is a new college counselor in the building. Her name is Patricia Doulis. We also are getting additional support from the NYU CAC program, which brings in basically a full-time college counselor to work as application support, running basics, including FAFSA workshops and any other questions that families and students would have. So they're going to be, they're already making moves in terms of getting acclimated to the college office environment for us. And that'll be part of the PTA conversation, as well as the elective course conversation early in the year. There's a number of students that are going to be enrolled in a specific portfolio development course, those especially seniors who have already met the vast majority of graduation requirements, and the college office will be pushing into that class specifically so that students will have additional support with their application process.
It's a question about lunch. Do they need to bring one, or will there be school lunch since they're
there will be school lunch. However, you can bring your own. You just can't leave. And we did have a lunch leave program for our seniors. Unfortunately, no longer.
Can the remote learning students can they participate in live class instruction?
Well, again, that has yet to be seen in terms of live streaming versus pre-recorded. My hope is that no matter what, our teachers will still be able to record some video. It's not something that I can mandate, but it's something that we want to build into our school's learning culture, where teachers do have at least pre-recorded video that clarifies content, assignments, and expectations.
It also seems like the school website is down. There's a few comments about that, so I don't know if the school's aware.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually just checked that, Mr. Re-sugiura. It's down.
Got it. All right, I will check that out now.
Okay. Let's see.
Yep.
Who is at the school where we can call or email to ask administrative questions? I think everyone can just contact Ms. Johnson. She'll drop her email in the chat again, but she will help direct your inquiries to anybody, the appropriate person.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yes.
When I call the school, I can't get a hold of anyone.
That makes sense because no one's there.
Yeah.
But you can totally email Ms. Johnson and she'll help out with that.
That's the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Will students still be given the chance to submit a request to change majors?
Yes, along with a rationale, but just know that right now programming is very close to being locked in. Again, that would have to be a conversation between the student guidance counselor as well as our AP of the Arts, Alma Reingold, who could then work with the teachers to make a determination of how feasible a switch would be. Again, it's not something that we do frequently.
Will there be paper packets and resources available for students?
Yeah, we actually just had a conversation as a faculty about teachers' desire to make sure that there were paper copies of certain or packets of certain work available to students. What we would do is, provide those paper packets to students who come in person, and then mail out ones where students were learning remotely and couldn't come to the building. I encouraged my faculty to make sure that if they were going to have copies, that they be done as early as possible, and that we have those ready to go, within the first couple days of the school year. It's going to be tough if certain members of the faculty also want copies made, but are also going to be fully remote. So I'm figuring out that logistics trick right now, but we'll get there.
What about art kits that students left behind from last year? So not the freshman art kits that will be given out, but like, sophomore, junior, who still has their supplies, but maybe they're doing remote learning.
Yeah, if it's in their locker and they're fully remote, then I know that question came up before, and I will say this, that for students who are fully remote and they need to pick up the contents of their lockers, we are going to be sending a survey home to all of those families specifically, the ones that have selected fully remote instruction. We will create a time, probably early September, early through mid-September, because I don't think it can all be done at once, where families can then come in and pick up the belongings from that student's locker. We did it for our graduating seniors, but we had to make sure that we operated in a cohort-specific basis first.
Can students still sign up for blended?
If they already signed up for remote, then the answer is, I think they still can sign up for blended, even if they started off the remote, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And Ms. Johnson, maybe.
I have to check that because
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we have a lot going on and there have been so many parents that are trying to switch. I'm actually waiting for FACE to give me a definitive answer because the actual deadline was August 7th.
Right. And again, we're not saying that folks can't. We know that students can. It's just a matter of exactly what the timeline is. So I'm talking specifically about if a family's already selected remote and they want to do blended before the school year begins. But I'm pretty sure that they can. Again, Ms. Johnson will look into it for us and get more information. So thanks for the question.
With the updated model, how many days a week is your child actually in the building?
Between 1 to 2, right, depending on what week it is in the cycle. But no matter what, over the course of 3 weeks, they're in the building 5 times. Over the course of a marking period, 10 times.
Let's see. A lot of these questions are very long.
I know there's going to be a lot more questions. I'm hoping that whatever we include in the FAQ that we put together, this parent guide and handbook for the community, assuages a lot of these concerns and answers the questions. I'm going to work to make that available within the next week. Of course, I want to have a town hall for students as well early next week to explain what this model is going to look like. I'm just waiting on getting a bit more of a solid answer about how we're going to be finishing our programming before I have that meeting. And to that end, Evie, I know that we're coming up on an hour. I would say that I can probably take questions until 6. I think I'm starting to lose my voice. And,
We're actually 5 minutes away.
There was a question that came up, if a parent did not complete the survey, it actually defaults to blended.
Right.
So if families did not complete the DOE Chancellor survey, it automatically defaults to blended.
But you can also now go and request remote if you would like. So if you defaulted to blended, you can at any time go switch to remote, from what I understand, right? Okay. Someone's just asking about a written protocol for what's to happen if someone in the school tests positive. I think all that's going to be in the frequently asked questions. I don't know if there's any other like burning questions related to school openings, not kind of like, you know, stuff not related, but like school reopening questions that hasn't been answered. If you want to just quickly drop it in the chat.
I'm seeing some questions.
School supply lists. I think we said how the new kits will be distributed. They'll either pick them up if they're doing blended learning, or they'll get mailed to them if they're doing remote learning.
Right. As far as I see some questions about like medical questions about antibody results. If you get those COVID antibody results, you know, get those to the student's guidance counselor, and they'll make sure the nurse is looped in. And students arrive, the first class begins at 8:52. So we encourage students to aim to get there earlier, because we are gonna, again, have to space out students upon entry, 6 feet minimum, as they swipe in the building.
Question about students will be moving from class to class. That's,
yes,
they will. And how will teachers be communicating with parents? I'm assuming similar as before.
Yeah, they're going to be using all the same mechanisms, including Convolve for text messaging. One thing that we're going to change, though, is the attendance system. So that was kind of a problem in the spring, because what we did was we had a very comprehensive attendance system where every teacher took period attendance and took it a number of different ways. It really captured a lot of data, but what it didn't do was give anyone peace of mind. So instead, what we're going to have happen is that at the beginning of every day, the first thing that students are going to do is go to a link on our website, which goes to a Google survey, student name, student ID number, click. That's it. You're in. And then that's the official attendance for the day. And the rest of the work, you know, like the outreach from teachers to parents shouldn't just be about attendance, should be about quality of work. And that's how we want to really center the conversation.
I think two just quick questions. How will they know which days to report? They'll get their schedule eventually, right? That will have it on there?
It's going to be on their, yeah, it'll be on their program.
And then if they're moving from class to class with the same small cohort, are they moving class to class with the same cohort, or will there be different students in each class?
Unfortunately, they'll be moving the same cohort for humanities classes because they usually maintain consistency there. But then for math and science, it's a different story. And the art classes, of course, it's very different depending on major.
A question about how parents of freshmen will communicate with teachers. You'll be set up, I'm sure, with pupil path and all that.
Yeah,
right?
so we are waiting until our student programs are finalized, and then we're loading in, we're syncing our pupil path and scheduler systems so that all of our teachers will be able to communicate with all of our new parents. We are going to provide registration information to all of our new families as well so that they can set up their accounts. Remember that if you have a child who has a pupil path account at another school, you need to re-register with a new registration code specific for art and design. And if your child's school previously used pupil path, again, doesn't matter, still need to re-register using the code for high school as opposed to middle school.
How will report cards be distributed?
Okay, and then I think the final question, not sure why there's an echo, but well, where did it go? Oh, so right now, you don't know if remote students will receive live instruction. Maybe they'll only see recorded instruction.
Right now, I don't have a specific guarantee for students who are fully remote if we're going to be able to do live streaming from a classroom. But at the very least, we'll have remote instruction with access points set up so that students will be able to understand the content. And ideally, teachers will have either recorded lessons or pre-recorded lessons that they can use as a supplement to access that material.
You will all get information on Pupil Path and how to set up an account. So that will be coming. There are a few questions about that. I think, you know, we're kind of at time right now. I know there's more questions. I just want to say, you know, thank you so much to Principal Re-sugiura, to Janine, to the whole staff, because this is a nightmare for and they're trying their best. And unfortunately, you know, plans get rejected and they keep having to revise them. So we all appreciate you and what you're doing. And parents, I know that it's very stressful for you, for your kids. everybody's in the same boat. So I think just kind of remember that, and, you know, staying safe and healthy is the most important thing, because
Yeah.
we'll eventually catch up, you know, so.
That's our top priority. Thank you, Abby. You know, your child's health and safety is our #1 priority. They will not be able to engage in any of the greater work, artisan creativity, the love and beauty of this world without it. And that's also their mental health, not just their physical health, and making sure that they are intact. So we don't want to jump the gun. Again, a lot of information has been transmitted today, but you know, you have to act in the best interest of your child, and we respect it, whatever that is.
And I know people want more information on the fully remote plan, and that will be coming. So try and be patient, because really the ground is like shifting constantly underneath the feet of the faculty and our principal. So more information is coming, and I don't know if you want to say anything else, Principal Re-sugiura, but.
Just thank you for taking your time. Evie, Barbara, thank you for hosting. Janine, thanks for the assist. And families, guardians, and students, thank you for taking the time today. Just enjoy as much of your summer as you can. Deep breaths. We're going to get through it together. We're an incredible community, and it's because of your participation and support that we are incredible.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. Again, reach out to Ms. Johnson if you have some more particular questions, and more info will be coming soon. Stay safe. Try and enjoy the rest of the summer. Try not to stress too much. But yeah.
One day at a time.
Where we are, exactly.
You betcha.
Take care.
Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.